was Tennessee's, and if you can put this on the poll question on YouTube, I'd appreciate it, was Tennessee's 2024 success season a success or a failure? Brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Caleb, you only have to pick one. You can't be in between. So you pick one.
It was a failure. I'm sorry, guys. The 2024 season was a failure. I predicted a national title in 2024 all the way back in 2022 before the season started. I wouldn't have called it a failure if they didn't win the national title. But to get bounced out in the first round of the college football playoff, when you thought this program had taken it, you thought 2022 was a stepping stone for greater things to come. It's a letdown. It is. I mean, I have to say, Dave, after looking at this season, not only was 2022 not a stepping stone, 2022 was better than this team. Honestly, I'm starting to think. And I didn't say that in the middle of the year because I thought this team's defense was better. But now I'm starting to question, did Tennessee, we talk about mega conferences with schedule imbalances. It looked like Tennessee got into the playoff because they benefited from a schedule imbalance in the SEC where they only played two of the good teams in the conference that year. I mean, I
want to argue with that because it's the way things go. You know, it's kind of like if you get pulled over. I mean, that's the way things go. I want to argue with that, but I can't. The schedule was pathetic. And I'm not talking about non-conference opponents, just when they caught people at the right time after a bye week or down on their dauber, whatever the case may be, it just seemed like things played out for Tennessee to win more so than what they did on the field. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's totally fair. And I totally agree with you. And nothing came of it. And so I think that, I mean, they caught what should have been a demoralized Ohio State team after the whole Ryan Day debacle. They called Arkansas when they were after a bye and Arkansas was reeling. They called Alabama when Alabama was somewhat reeling because of the Vanderbilt loss. They called Georgia when Georgia was coming off the Ole Miss loss. And I mean, they couldn't cash in on any of those except the Alabama game. And they barely won that one at home. And so when I break this down, when I look at it, I say, look, I'm sorry. I think that this Tennessee team, given what we thought, let's rewind a little bit less than a year ago. Because we're less than a year removed from Nico's first start in the Citrus Bowl against Iowa.
Yes.
Dave, let's be honest. When we saw that Nico that performed in the Citrus Bowl against Iowa, we were all thinking much bigger things for the offense this year than what we saw.
Yeah, I was befuddled by people that said, oh, they'll just win 8 or 9 games. I never got that. I thought this was a 10-win team from the beginning. And whatever you think about the disappointment, so I'll weigh in on my disappointment talk. As you have, you call it a disappointment, and some of that's expectations, right? You had Nico winning the Heisman, you had to win the national championship. So, by your definition, that is indeed a failure. That's a disappointment. I won't argue with you with that. But I thought they would be a solid 10-win season and make a run in the college football playoff. Well, is one game a run? I don't know. It's not 64 teams like basketball, so I'm not sure, but I felt like they got respect from the college football playoff to some extent. I felt like they established themselves as a national championship contender. I believe there are 3 tiers at the top of the top 25 or so. And I think that's the first tier that can win the championship. And we discussed this on Saturday night. But I think there are a couple of teams. Georgia obviously won. And then there's a second tier that if things broke right, they could win a championship. And there's a last tier you got no shot. I think Tennessee has gone from in 4 years to got no shot to got a shot. So I can't call this a disappointment. I can't do that. The program brought to you in part by our good friends Banks & Jones, T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com. Caleb, I want your retort on that. Then we'll go to the message board here momentarily with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? Banks and Jones, T. Scott Jones. All right, so Caleb, let me be real clear here. I told you why I don't think this is a disappointment, but you actually started off the topic with, is this a disappointment? So keep rolling. Let me hear you feel about Tennessee losing to Ohio State, not only the way they lost, but in the fashion they lost.
Okay, so here's where I'm in league with you. There's two types of ways to judge talent, which is the personnel across the board and then the quarterback, right? Like difference in quarterback, that's like a separate type of talent to judge for teams, isn't it?
Yes.
I felt across the board personnel, Tennessee was what you said they were. They could win a national title if things break right. But then I thought the quarterback play would be so good that by itself would elevate Tennessee to they can just straight up win a national title.
I think where you misstepped, if I may, and I respect your opinion. I think we both may have misstepped a little bit. You more than me. We saw how bad Joe Milton was last year, and we expected that you could just plug a guy in and he'd be Hendon Hooker in 2022. And I think what we learned is that's not the case.
That's not the case, but that's a disappointment that it's not the case because I watched Nico in the Polynesian Bowl. I saw the throws he can make. I love you, but there's not a lot of pressure in the Polynesian Bowl. No, there's not. That's true. But I will say that Nico, I'm just going to say that more than Hendon Hooker, Nico can make every single throw from the pocket. And I particularly his deep ball. He's got the best deep ball. He's got the most beautiful deep ball of anybody.
No, he doesn't. I mean, Hendon Hooker has the most accurate deep ball, according to one NFL scout. He said that I may have ever scouted in 25 years. So there's a special touch to that. Let's not just downgrade Hendon.
Even if Nico's deep ball's a little bit less than Hendon Hooker, when you add in the fact that he can make every throw over the middle too. I mean, you open up an entire level of the offense that Nico should have been able to run that Hendon Hooker couldn't do. And it didn't reveal itself this year. Now, part of this, and look, I'll say this, part of this, Josh Heupel's got to go back to the drawing board. And maybe Joey Halsey's not the guy to do this. But teams I didn't think that they were going to be able to figure out Tennessee's offense. And I don't know where the bigger disappointment is. So I'm trying to figure this out. Is it Nico or is the fact that, one, the receivers were not fast enough to get separation this year? And I thought they easily would be. And they were all big disappointments in this game.
No, most disappointing factor of this season to me might be receivers, because actually it is receivers. I don't even think it's close, because I had questions about the offensive line that had its ups and downs. I had questions about the secondary that they rebuilt and did a fantastic job on doing that. I still, though, however, was gung-ho about the receivers, which included a guy that had transferred and coming off a bad injury, another guy coming off an injury that hadn't performed last year. I still, though, believe that if we say that Squirrel White's 100% healthy, there's not a concern about the receivers. Would you agree or disagree with that?
That if Brew McCoy didn't lose a bit of a step from breaking his leg, that could have helped too. Both of those things kind of hurt. It felt like, I'm just going to say it this way. It felt like Josh Heupel was forcing out receivers who were you've talked about this with Squirrel White. He was forcing out receivers who were banged up because they were getting all the first team reps. And in reality, he should have set them and forced out and given Mike Matthews and Dante Thornton those first team reps.
Now, wait a second. Ultimately, it's all in Josh Heupel, right?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. But you said something that's a little curious there. You said he's in charge of continuing to send them out. Usually in charge of substitutions is the position coach, which brings us back to, did they hire a position coach because they wanted to keep things in-house? And has he done a great or a good job? Because we thought great job after he coached the Biletnikoff winner.
Yes.
But we don't know the great job. I don't know that he's done a great job now. Do you?
No, I don't. We're 2 years in now. And last year we put it all on Joe Milton, but now we're putting it. It could be the bad luck of injuries, and Kelsey Pope was just trying to make the receivers that he had work that had been, whether or not they were fully healthy. He was trying to force them to work.
Well, let's look at this for a second before we start giving Kelsey Pope his bouquets, which everybody did after the Biletnikoff winner and Jalen Hyatt. Let's look at this. What if he's just had a bleep ton of talent?
I mean, that's not revealing itself with Hyatt in the NFL, though.
Well, but okay. Fair. But I have seen at times programs that they will have one good group when they're rebuilding. And it's not their plan. They want to be good all over. But a guy like Josh Heupel is better coaching a receiver or a quarterback. So it's just naturally going to fall that way. So, I mean, that's my question. I mean, what's been more disappointing, the receivers or anybody else?
Definitely the receivers, even more than the tackles, because the tackles, as you bring up, have played on sprained ankles this year. I don't think we expected the tackles to be a strength of Tennessee's this year. I thought we just thought they could be serviceable, but we thought the receivers would be a giant weapon. And
Can I say this something based off a conversation I had within Tennessee's program?
Sure.
Lance Hurd's going to be all ACC. And
Really?
his start to the season was because of that ankle. Now, I know he didn't play perfectly on Saturday, but I'm just telling you, being a fairly big guy, when you sprain an ankle, it doesn't go away soon. I think we were both, you, me, and our audience, a little bit hard on him at times.